This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
We are doing open lines and taking your calls, in which you can call in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We may use it on a future episode where we take calls. 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537 is the phone number to weigh in on any of the cases that we are following for you right here. Bryan Kohberger happening to be one of the big ones right now. Let's go and hear somebody's questions and opinions. Hi.
Hey, this is Julie. I'm calling from Wisconsin. I just want to share my thoughts on Bryan Kohberger and whether or not this case will proceed to trial. And I believe he will absolutely want to push this to trial. I think the main reason being that he wants to relive the crime, or rather know the reactions, feel the reactions from the survivors, from the family. I think that he will absolutely relish their emotional torment. And to him, this will make it all worth it. But I think this is sort of maybe one of the highlights, if you will, of having committed the crime. So I think this will be just a long, grueling, ugly, painful process. Thanks, Tony.
Hey, it's kind of what I just said on the other episode. There's a term that one of my guests likes to use, Robin Drake, who is a former FBI, CIA counterintelligence, and he uses the term wound collector. I think this man is he's a wound collector, but he's also a wound seeker, where he seeks out. It's almost like cutting. Something I've never really understood. I've never felt that, but when you put yourself in a mindset and you kind of go, okay, I get how someone would do this just to feel. I think that it's almost like a mental version of that, where obviously there's been a lot of cutting, no pun intended. The people were stabbed, but it's mental in his way. He's not cutting himself. He's subjecting himself mentally to horrible, horrible situations, ridicule, disgust, hate. And I think he relishes in it. I think he needs that to feel. And it's a version of that it's like mental cutting, if you will.
So you think he's one of these people that just felt so numb in life that he needed something so drastic to make himself feel something?
Yes.
Wow.
I think that he so desperately wanted, and I base that on the early writings that he put online when he was a teenager, so like 10 years ago, where he was talking about not being able to feel, noticing that there was something very wrong, and it was very different than what he had felt in childhood. He saw his family embracing and hugging at the holidays, and he just felt empty and cold, and he felt nothing about any of it. And he recognized it as being off and wrong, but obviously he never got any sort of help for any of this. And I think it just manifested and got bigger and bigger and just kept rolling down the hill and taking on more steam until you finally got this monster that he allegedly turned into being.
Do you think he pursued criminal justice with the intent of doing harm to somebody else?
Maybe not.
Figuring out?
Maybe not initially, but I think that's where it went. I don't think that was necessarily, I went into this with this intention, but I think he discovered that there was an interest there and that just the subject made him feel something. And my guess is the more he got into it, the more he learned about it, the more he started to be able to feel some sort of emotion, however, be it horrible and twisted they are. But he started to realize this is one of the only areas that essentially triggers him in some way, shape, or form emotionally. And the only way to really feel more and more, I think, is to become the type of person that he was studying that did give him some feeling. And I think that's the direction that he went. My opinion, if in fact he is the person, obviously innocent until proven guilty. But if we're assuming that he is and operating from that perspective, that's where I would go.
Well, and isn't it upsetting too that here's this person who felt this way and people around him must have realized it, but didn't do anything about it.
Well, you can realize it, but what can you do about it is the thing. There's nothing you can do unless that person is posing in a grave danger or you caught his plan midway through, which I don't think many did. I think he was very much just operating in plain sight, but not doing anything illegal to what could you do? You can't do. It's the same way you can't do anything about the women who are throwing themselves at him from the outside. They're clearly disturbed. There's something wrong with them. They're not well. But
I guess I wanted a family member to maybe reach out to him and help him, get him some counseling, but maybe they were messed up too.
Well, not that they were messed up. The person needs to want to get it. And I don't think he wanted to get it. I think he felt like he was beyond getting it. And I think at the very beginning, he recognized that he wanted it. But I think in most cases, people who are like this, they're the last people that are going to reach out for help or accept help until something happens. And even then, still not accept help because there's not much you can do at that point. So even if you have the people who are there that care about you and want to get you help, there's not many things in place that allow anyone to physically restrain someone from what the potential that they have for doing harm.
Nope. Very good point.
So I would imagine everyone knew he was a bit awkward. I'm sure his parents and his dad, even when he got an apartment, reached out to the guy next door after he left saying, hey, my son's moving in over here. And he's like, what, late 20s. And he's like, hey, if you could be his friend or something. It was very bizarre. It's like, hey, will you play with my kids on the playground? Like, that's awkward to do when your kids are little. I can't imagine attempting this when they're in their 20s. That just... Yeah,
that's a bit awkward. But that, again, Dad knew that, my son is, something's up about him. He's different. I guess I don't have any kids, but if I had a kid that was struggling like that, I might want to take them to a professional and say, hey, what can I do to support him?
Yeah, but he's not a kid. That's the thing. He's not a kid. He's a full grown ass adult. This is not like a child. We're like, let me take you to the doctor. He can tell you to fuck off.
Exactly. No, you're right.
And there's nothing you could do about it. So should have, I don't know. Maybe there was things done in his childhood. I have no idea. But if they were, none of it was effective. Let's go to another caller and hear this.
Hi, my name is Amanda, and I am from Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota. And
Yay!
I'm calling in regards to the podcast about Bryan Kohberger and the subpoenas for DoorDash and all the other entities. And I just wanted to comment on DoorDash specifically. I'm part of one of the groups online, and a lot of people, and I actually drive for DoorDash. So one of my thoughts on that is the fact that there was a DoorDash order that came at 4 a.m. to me, and the fact that Kohberger likely entered the residence around 4:05 seems too much of a coincidence. That's an odd time to get a DoorDash order, even given the fact that they were out at the bar and whatnot. And so there's some speculation that possibly he used the DoorDash person as a way to get into the house, or even maybe he used a gift card and placed the order himself. But I think that the DoorDash is going to end up being, there's going to be more to it that obviously I'm speculating, as is everybody else, but I just think there's something to the DoorDash part of it, whether it be the order was falsely placed or something to that effect. Or maybe the DoorDash driver could identify the vehicle being at the scene. Because when I do DoorDash orders, I usually sit at the residence until I get another order, or at least near it. So I think that driver will be a very important witness, and it could possibly at least be somebody that could put his car at the scene, independent of a camera. So anyhow, those are my thoughts, and I love your podcast. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the DoorDash has been subpoenaed, or they've received warrants, actually, for information on the driver, on the order, on everything. And I don't think they're in any way suspicious of the driver. And I honestly doubt the driver has anything to do with this whatsoever, other than they were there. And I also take issue with that it was an odd thing that DoorDash arrived at 4 a.m. in a college town. Bars close at 2. The kids are hanging out till 5 or 6 in the morning. I think it's probably not that uncommon for DoorDash to be showing up at a college town at that hour. That doesn't seem bizarre to me at all.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was in college, the only thing you could get was a pizza at that hour. And it had, it was a college town. It was actually a pizza place that was open 24/7. So yeah, you're right. That's a very common thing.
And those pizza places were packed to the brim still at 4 a.m. So not crazy there. But could it have been something where he placed the order and then, DoorDash got there? Could it have been where I think we would have already heard this story had there been more involvement, quite honestly, because they have talked to DoorDash already. They knew this very early on. And if the driver knows something, maybe they have been told not to say anything because they may be called into court to testify in what they witnessed. But there was nothing in the arrest affidavits about DoorDash, about any sort of interaction with them whatsoever, other than the fact that it appeared that an order was placed at that time. So I know they could go a lot of ways there. Hopefully there is some sort of evidence that that driver can give some sort of eyewitness testimony, but I guess only time will really tell on that one. But yeah, if you got a story or a theory on any of the stories that we're talking about, give us a call. The phone number is toll free 888 554-5537, 888-554-5537. Let's do one more on Kohberger on this episode. Let's go to this call. Hi.
Hey, Tony, this is Drew Gumball from Iowa. And a couple interesting thoughts. First off, firmly believe that Bryan Kohberger did it. No question about that. I also would love to believe that he was just an, overconfident person thinking he knew more than everybody. Wanted to try and get away with it, couldn't. My only thought and question is, what if it's more than that? What if this guy was so into his studies that he is trying to lead you on a path that could get him off on circumstantial evidence? I mean, we haven't seen the day in court yet, and obviously before he committed the murders, he hadn't seen the trials of Alec Murdaugh. But what if he was trying to be sneaky enough in there that he has planned things to make the day in court a lot more complex than we're giving him credit for? I mean, there's a real chance out there that maybe he has planned things that we're going to find out in court during discovery or otherwise, that maybe he thought that he would be the one who was arrested but could get off in court. That was my only thought. Maybe his whole intent was to get arrested for the murders, but maybe he's cocky enough that he thinks that his day in court will exonerate him. So, anyway, thank you. That was just my thoughts.
I think we're giving him far too much credit if that's the theory. Yeah, I really do. I mean, on the surface, it looks like this was very well crafted. Then you start looking at the evidence and the way everything went down, it was very sloppy. This was someone who it appears was likely his first time committing a crime like this. Initially, people were like, he must have done more of these. No, I after talking to many experts in the FBI and CIA and defense attorneys and everybody who does this stuff for a living for long periods of time, everybody's kind of, for the most part, on the same page of, yeah, this was sloppy. He was just someone who thought he was smarter than the room, but really was not. So I doubt it. Well, I mean, circumstantial evidence can just rear its head at random places without any sort of planting it or any intent to it, just because it's there and because the defense will be grasping at probably anything and everything to try and say, what about this? But what about that? Just see what's going to stick. So I don't think there's enough that this is going to be more of a wild goose chase. I think we're going to find out a lot more, but I think we're going to find out a lot more about how sloppy of a criminal he actually was and how much smarter he thought he was than the rest of the room.
Well, a lot of killers are cocky. They think they're going to get away with it. They think that they've got the right plan to make it all happen. And it comes out, especially these investigators are amazing. No matter how much knowledge he may have from his studying. He's not a professional.
No, he's not. And he's a kid who read a lot of books about this stuff and basically operated from a book standpoint. And that's kind of where it ended. But it's an interesting thought, and I think, well worth discussing. But in my opinion, that's where that's at.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition
This is the Hidden Killers podcast.
with Tony Bruschi.
If you want to weigh in on any of these cases, we'd love to hear your voice and maybe use it on a future episode. 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537, the phone number to call, and share your thoughts. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any breaking updates and discussions on the cases we are following for you right here. My name is Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.